שמש דקה ומרפא בכנפיה.
Last time we talked about the farewell Naomi tried to say or said to her two daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth. In the process of this farewell, there was one Hebrew word which I must return to before we go on in the text. It's the Hebrew word Chesed, which is commonly translated as grace or mercy. Personally, I very much love the English translation loving kindness because it intuitively grabs much more of its meaning. Chesed is one of those words, of those Hebrew words, where I sometimes cannot avoid the feeling that translators try to invent what it means from the context and sometimes come up with some quite adventurous products. I just collect it and I'll try to throw the options at you and you choose then whatever you want to take and how you want to translate Chesed. It is, and I certainly have not a complete collection here. It is steadfast love, compassion, favor, grace, kindness, benevolence, mercy, graciousness, faithfulness, reliability, loyalty, covenant faithfulness, confidentiality, friendliness, benevolence. Oh, I had that already. Piety, goodness, kindness, generosity, attractiveness, loveliness, beauty. But then if none of these fits, suddenly it has to be shame, abomination, injury, disgrace, shamefulness, reviling, mocking. My own working translation, and I use the word Chesed, but I have to translate it. So in German, which is my mother tongue, I translate it with liebevolle Zuwendung, which would be something like tender, loving, affectionate attention, but somehow I miss then the loyalty aspect, which is very important. So you discuss it and you make a decision and you find the final somehow solution for this translation dilemma. I'll go back to the text. It says there, Naomi says to her daughters-in-law, go, return, each of you to her mother's house, and may the Lord make you chesed, as you made chesed with the dead ones and with myself. The term itself, chesed, occurs only 3 times in the book of Ruth, but the matter, as a German theologian pointed out, is at stake from the first to the last line. But I want to confront you with rabbinical expositions, and if we go back into antiquity, then Rabbi Zeira said, in the book of Ruth, there's neither impurity nor purity. There's no prohibition and no permission. But we need these laws. We need to say what is allowed and what is forbidden. So why then was this written in the first place? And then he himself gives the answer. He says, to teach you what great reward awaits those who act out of pure grace, mercy, loyalty, however you say. He actually uses there the word chasadim, which is the plural of chesed. The Midrash is clear. Chesed is the most important theme of the book. The book of Ruth, the scroll, this little 4-chapter book, is the book of chesed, of mercy, loyalty, love. And it's a love that is born out of kindness, and it very often has this covenant love or covenant loyalty involved. One Messianic Jewish interpreter tells us that it requires extraordinary commitment. It requires or it takes extraordinary risks, and it requires to be done in a proper way. It's interesting that the rabbinic tradition not so much focuses on the law or the proper way to be done, but it emphasizes, and I'm quoting now Rambam, Maimonides, who says that any good deed is chesed, which is not subject to any regularity, regulation, or legality. And that is why every good deed that God gives is called chesed. And in many cases it is kind of clothed into a covenant or promises and the love, the loyalty towards these promises, towards this covenant. So it requires a lot of personal engagement, commitment. And Ruth repeatedly sabotages her own personal interests in practicing chesed. I personally think if you want to feel the heartbeat of God, if you want to come to understand what the Father feels, that what we see in the book scroll of Ruth is a great help. Ruth practiced, and we have to keep that in mind, practiced chesed towards Naomi. She bound herself in loyalty to this bitter grandmother, even though she did not know how the story would end. And this, from my point of view, is very, very important. And I just give you a short hint. Neither did Moses when he asked the Lord for Israel, nor did Jeremiah, nor Paul. But if you want to go into this, you have to look at our series on Romans 9 to 11. Then you understand this line. But Ruth very much fits into this line of people who interceded for Israel.